When we're lighting from a pendant fixture, we need to consider carefully how many bulbs are in it and what is the light it will project out in the scene. I've switched over to a shaded view, and we can see the interior lights I've put in so far on my surface mount cans under the bridge and on the ceiling. I've also brought in a couple of chandeliers, and I'll go into a perspective and orbit around to see them. We don't actually see them from the cameras I've got set up, but they will play an impact in the lighting. These are varied length square glass tubes held up by a brass mounting, and there's two of them up on the ceiling. If we go upstairs, for example, we'll see them in a rendering, and we'll definitely see these in the reflection and in the final gather of our existing shots. If you're working with the previous exercise file, you can merge these in, choosing on the max icon, import, and merge, and go pick that scene and merge in those chandeliers. With the chandeliers then, what I'll do is to get a light in them, approximating the light from the whole chandelier as a group rather than a unique bulb. If we try to put in unique bulbs in chandeliers, often we get too many lights and splayed shadows everywhere. It's only when a chandelier has discrete fixtures and we really need to see overlapping lights, like let's say on a dining room table, that we should put in a bulb in each one. What I'll do, though, is to get a photometric bulb in each fixture and also get on some custom materials for those chandeliers. I'll start out, though, by preempting some issues, selecting my chandelier geometry, right-clicking, and going into the Object Properties. In the Object Properties, what I'm going to do is turn off Cast Shadows, and this way those chandeliers cannot cast any shadows and won't result in long splayed shadows up on the walls. I'll click OK, and now I'm going to get some lights in. In my top view then, zooming in and pressing F3 to go to a wireframe, I'll make some photometric lights, choosing Create, Lights, and Free Light. I'll put one photometric in the chandelier and right-click to stop creating. For this light then, I'll go over to the Modifier tab and drop down in the template. We've got some options in here. None of these bulbs will really do justice to the chandelier, but what we're after is simply the light color. I'm going to put it in as a 100-watt bulb, and then I'll zoom in and change its distribution. Instead of uniform spherical, I'm going to drop down and pick Uniform Diffuse. Now in that Shape and Area Shadows section, I'm going to change this over, again from a point into a sphere. And this way I'll get a larger, rounder light from it, as if this light was coming from a round source. I'll make sure that this is aimed down in the scene in a left view, and I'll put it up into the chandelier and change the size. Often what we're after in a pendant fixture is not, again, a unique bulb for each part of it, but rather a general volume of light emitted from that fixture. I'll take this radius up, trying out 24. It gives me a nice big sphere, so that generally this chandelier emits this amount of light. I can tweak the intensity as needed, but getting it sized right is the big deal, so that we get the idea of a lot of soft light from this. I'll name this light Chandelier and then clone it over. I've called it Chandelier 0.01, and now I'll shift clone it over on the x-axis, making it an instance in the other chandelier. I'll make sure it looks right in the top view, and now I'm ready to test out my render. I'll go into my camera stills, and I'll hit render and see how it looks. As we can see in the render, and there was a section in there of calculating the photons first before final gather, we're not getting much from our interior lights. What we need to do is to drastically boost up their intensity to counter the intensity of that sun and the exposure we're working with. I'll stop the render, and then I'll pick my interior lights, starting out with those chandelier fixtures and increasing their intensity. I'll scroll down, and right now we can see they're putting out 139 candle power. I'm going to bring this up. It may seem fairly drastic, but in this case we're after the cinematic, simply making it look correct regardless of the value. If you're dealing in a lighting analysis, you may want to leave these as their actual bulb values, or use a photometric web. But for this purpose, although we're using a photometric light which falls off over distance correctly, we can put these values wherever we need to look right. I'll try it out at 1,000, and then I'll do the same with my spots, selecting them and bringing up their intensity. For these, I'll try out 800 and see if it gets anywhere. We're just barely getting some light in the scene, and so I'll continue to raise these values and test render. Don't be afraid to really push that power up, getting as bright as you need so that your interior lights show as well as your daylight.